Comfy?
Yeah.
Good.
Thank you.
Brilliant. So it's a real joy to have you here, Josh, and to speak to you face to face. So I first met Josh online, not necessarily where you might think. It was a Zoom meeting. And in fact, Josh, we would meet online every week on a Wednesday for an hour in my Gathering Space Zoom group, which was an absolute lifeline, I think, really, for many of us. It started in the lockdown, and we went through some stuff together, and it was finally possible to meet Josh here at 223 once we opened up again. So really good to see you, and off Zoom, off the crap Wi-Fi. Josh wasn't always there because you have the worst Wi-Fi in the world. But your prayers, I remember particularly in that time, used to be so uplifting. You've got a great heart and a great way of praying, Josh. So it was really lovely to get to know you in that sense. But we're here to talk about you.
Okay.
So, Josh, we just want to hear a little bit about your story, and I just wondered whether you could just tell us where you're from, where you grew up, and where did your faith journey start?
Okay, yeah, so I was born in Barking, grew up in Ilford, then moved out to rural Berkshire when I was about 10 years old, but then been back in London since, a little bit of time in Spain. My family are from Jamaica, and that's really pronounced in my sort of upstart, my growing up. And so, yeah, alongside all of that was the Christian faith. My grandfather was a church minister, and so I wasn't ever kind of like forced to go to church, but it was always present in the family, and decided to do so mainly for like social reasons in my early teens, and then started taking it more seriously at the age of like 15, and then more seriously still at the age of 22. So yeah, just been journeying since then, really.
Cool. So when we met on Zoom, that was quite a time of transition for you in some ways. And I just wonder whether you could just tell a little bit about that time. What was going on for you in life then?
So at that time, I had just come out of a 3.5-year relationship with my now ex-boyfriend. I had decided to move to Spain, but all of this was kind of like halted by the pandemic. So in terms of being socially isolated, I was very much that, living alone. There'd be like days that would go past where I wouldn't see another human being. So like really dealing with the effects of like loneliness, not knowing what my future would be necessarily. I had an idea of what I wanted it to be and thought I was very much called to go to Spain, but then not being able to do so was quite confusing. However, despite all of that, I was still employed, so I was thankful for that. Through the help of my parents, I was able to get onto the property ladder. So there was a lot of good things happening, but at the same time, trying to sort of manage that and balance that against a crippling sort of sense of loneliness that I'm still coping with today.
Gosh, yeah. So it was tough for you. Yeah. Just sort of backpedaling a little bit, we probably messed a little bit at the story. How was the kind of coming out thing? Obviously, you had a relationship, and how was that in relation to your faith?
That was really, really interesting in terms of, I think people knew that I was gay from before I admitted it to myself. I only kind of accepted that when I was like 22 in Madrid. I thought, okay, I'm in a completely different context, yet I'm still feeling the same way. And so it was at that point where I was like, okay, this isn't something that's going to ever change. I used to try and pray the gay away. I used to have this little game that I would do where I was like, I'd look at cars going past, calculate all of the numbers in the registration plate. If it added up to an odd number, that meant I was gay. And if it was an even number, that meant I was straight. So I was desperately searching.
That's random. That's really random.
Yeah. So I was definitely searching for like a clear voice from God, but actually never got it. And I've actually only started seeing my relationship with God grow more as I've accepted my sexuality, pursued love, pursued authenticity. And then actually seeking out spaces that are affirming, that are inclusive. And I was saying this before earlier to a few people, that it feels like I'm having to seek God more strongly than if I were to go to a church and I was immediately accepted and could just take it for granted that I can be there. I'm really having to fight for this relationship with God. And I think it's stronger for that reason. And it's actually the only way I'm able to live my life as a queer black man, sort of managing sort of multiple identities, and then being in contention with one another. God is like the glue that holds that together, or at least the thing that keeps me sane in many respects.
That's amazing. So you referred to being 22 and in Madrid, and that was a moment where you encountered God in a deeper way as you came out and to yourself. I mean, that's wonderful for many people. It's almost like a splitting place where they have to kind of leave their faith for a bit. But that didn't happen for you, Josh.
No, and I think it was because, again, being alone at the time, I think it just really deepened my relationship with God. And upon sort of coming out to my family, that's when a lot of the religious rhetoric started to come out about what we've probably all heard. I won't sort of repeat it, but just stuff that made me feel like there couldn't be this relationship with me and God. But because I had tested that and found that to be true for myself, my mum did sort of support me in that and sort of made very clear to me that you can be gay and Christian. So I think that was enough affirmation that I needed, even though the kind of feeling at the time wasn't quite as sort of affirming. Just having that kind of, we can agree upon that at least, really helped to me to just know that actually I am just doing this for myself, and this is who I am, and God knows that, and sort of finding other people who know that too is real affirmation.
Excellent. Wow. So you've touched on it already, and I mean, many of us here today will know what it's like to be in a minority and marginalised. For yourself, that there's an intersection, which you've talked about already, in terms of being black, queer, Christian, and finding those spaces where they all come together is really challenging. Tell us a bit about that experience for you, and maybe there is some blessing there. I don't know. Yeah. How's that been for you?
Well, I'll start with the blessing, because I feel like being aware of the intersections, and I think it's helped me be healthily skeptical of any group claiming sort of monopoly on terms of how God is experienced or how a particular identity is performed. Recognizing there's myriad expressions, I'm then able to kind of sort of see that, there's diversity, and have a real appreciation for that. And I think it makes me aware of my own blind spots, knowing that these intersections exist and I don't represent them all, and there's going to be more experiences that I'm unaware of, and to have the humility to recognize that I might not know the answers and that I might not be able to suppose that one experience trumps another's. So I think there's a real kind of, I would like to think, a sort of a compassion or a willingness to empathize with others, which I think are things that I should desire in my life. But then on the flip side of it all, managing all of these identities and then being in competition with each other at many times, there's like a maddening effect in terms of at one time feeling like, I can express myself, but then, so say in a queer Christian space, it's great that I can reconcile those identities, but then it'll be my cultural identity that might come into question at a certain time, or not finding that catered to, and, not being able to really consolidate everything. And then if I were to go to an African Caribbean church, my queer identity then being the issue, and really just playing this game with my identities, it just becomes tiring. So actually finding that rest to then actually commune with God is difficult, because, I've already been split apart inside, needing God to glue it back together, but still very feeling like triggered from that experience. So it's continually doing that. It wears me down, and it just makes me think, actually, where is my place? Not got an answer to that yet.
No, thank you, Josh, for being so honest. That's important for us to hear. And so I suppose my last question is, where have you found the life? Where is the nourishment for your soul? Where do you find that peace that you're looking for at the moment? How is that going?
Well, I don't know if I've got addicted to the kind of sense of loneliness and misery and sort of the isolation. But it's in those moments where I'm actually finding God, because I feel like there's been times where I've deferred to somebody else to give me that sense of fulfillment or nourishment, then that person leaves my life, then that sense of wholeness and completeness goes along with them. And I think I've been doing that, attaching that to a particular job or a particular, I dance as well, so it'll be a particular dance class and a particular routines and things like that. And when they go, all I'm left with is just myself, but it's actually God that has been keeping me through those moments of loneliness and isolation or when things change. So even though in my pursuit of, wholeness or nourishment, God hasn't necessarily been the first thing, I'm realizing God was the actual thing that was keeping me together in that time. So I think, to answer that, it would be God, as simple and plain as that. That's the only thing that's really keeping me nourished and, giving my soul life.
Wonderful, Josh. Great. Bless you. Absolutely. Well,
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So just from that applause, I want to say a big thank you to you, Josh, and we just want to wrap you around with God's love, and we want you to know that you are so special to us here.
Thank you.
We love that you join us and that you share your stories, and they're so precious.
Great.
And they bless us.
Oh, thank you.
And may you be blessed as you journey on with God, and hopefully we can do some of that together.
Yes.
Yeah.
Amen to
Brilliant.
that. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bless you, Josh.